The first computer was built in 1943 and filled up a whole room. The United States Army said it would revolutionize the future. But did they know what was just upon the horizon? A future filled with laptops in the palm of your hand, cell phones that bring families and friends together across the world at the touch of a button, and computers that could write papers in seconds. With new and emerging technologies releasing every day, how do we know what is safe to use and how to teach kids to navigate this new age of learning? Are you afraid of the future that we're stepping into? Have you noticed any impact on AI on students at Needham High School yet?
What I have heard secondhand from teachers and administrators is that this is something, AI, and in particular generative AI, because AI has been with us for a while. Grammarly, for example, has been around. Auto spell check on your, in a Google Doc. That's kind of been around for a while. But it's the generative AI that's creating new content that I think has really caught everyone's attention. And yeah, I think students are probably trying different things and learning different things. How it's impacting them right now, I think that's going to take some time.
The biggest thing with artificial intelligence, and I'll talk mostly about generative AI when I talk about AI, is that it is a tool. It is a tool just like pretty much everything else, just like a pencil, just like a calculator, just like a computer. And so it doesn't matter necessarily that it is a tool, it matters more about how it is used. So I think that with the appropriate scaffolding, with the appropriate approaches, it could be a really powerful tool where you're seeing the acceleration of the writing process, and potentially it could lead to seeing drastic increases in our ability to write out ideas and thoughts, where at high school level, high schoolers now may be able to write at a college level, and college, undergrad may be able to write at graduate level, and that means that our graduate students and our doctoral students have to be writing even more detailed and more depth than they've ever done before, because they have tools like this to really smooth out those rough edges very quickly. And so I think that is one of the greatest potentials, that it will allow for immense levels of growth when used well. I think the other side of that coin is that if you're using it to do the work, then you as the learner are not doing the work, and therefore you're not learning. And I think that there are a lot of fears around that artificial intelligence is going to take the learning out of the classroom. And I would contend that it's probably similar to using a calculator in a lot of ways. It is kind of the calculator of language. So being able to be aware of when you're using it and when not to, and just like we do here in our math classes, I think is really important.
And in terms...
That's a really great question. I think that AI has the potential to negatively impact the way students learn. I think what it comes down to is when we think about all of these tools, innovations, software that's becoming available, just like we think with any educational technology tool that we use in Needham or in any school system, we have to think about what its purpose is to help drive education and student learning forward. So with AI, because it's a technology that arrived, really, it just showed up one day in 2022 when OpenAI released ChatGPT. We're scrambling in a sense, right? Like we're trying to figure out how to use it best. We've done a really good job of that this year, because what we've done is we've used cautious experimentation with really thinking about keeping student privacy and student safety at the forefront, right? So there's not many tools right now that are approved for student use in Needham that use AI. The ones that students do officially have access to go through an intensive vetting process through a data privacy alliance that we belong to ensure that the companies that are using that are collecting the student data are collecting it appropriately and aren't sharing it.
What repercussions do you think students should receive for using AI?
Figure out.
So on that topic, do you think it's okay for students to use AI?
Yes. So, and let me qualify that. AI came on the scene, generative AI anyhow, like all of a sudden, like a year and a half ago. All of a sudden, that's all everyone's talking about. Some of the other technologies that we've become used to, the iPhone, which went through some different versions. We have iPhone what now, 15 now? I don't know. Some of the other technologies and computers used to be huge, and then they became smaller, and then they were desktops, and then laptops, and now your phone is that computer. Those took time, though. Those took years, even decades, to evolve, and people had an opportunity to kind of catch up or sit down and learn how to program, or sit down and understand how their desktop works. With generative AI, things happen like that. And I don't think we should be spooked by that. I don't think in schools we should all of a sudden freak out and lock the doors and say, keep it out, because it's here. And it's part of our students' lives, it's part of my life, it's part of the world now. And so I think what we need to do is figure out a way how to use it safely and appropriately in school and creatively to help our students grow, manage it, and to help them learn. Because it's here to stay. So to fight it, ignore it, or denounce it doesn't do anybody any good.
So with that, do you think there are any ethical considerations or potential drawbacks to be mindful of when deploying AI into the schools?
Well, I think there are, and I don't think I even know what they all are. I don't think any of us really knows what they all are. When I started out in education, I guess I still like to consider myself an English teacher. And so essays and writing were my thing. And when I think about, ChatGPT and even Gemini and generative AI, I worry that is a student basically just going to, prompt their essay and be done with it and not have to go through the hard work of editing and thinking and spelling and rephrasing or considering new words and syntax. So I worry about that because that's an important skill. So I think what's important is for our teachers to be leading these discussions with students and do some experimentation where appropriate in classes. It doesn't have to be all classes, and not every teacher has a comfort level with AI yet to really create a lesson or to make something productive in a classroom. So I think we have to give our teachers time. We may have to come up with certain guidelines, but I think we can experiment with different things, like Canva, for example, to create some presentations, to tell a story, or to help us complement our learning and our research in our classroom. It's going to take time. We have to practice with it, but we shouldn't be afraid of it. And we have to, ultimately, we'll have to come up with some parameters that make sense.
Kind of two parts here. The restricted kind of nature of artificial intelligence actually kind of is greater than the Needham High School or even Needham Public School policy. It's a national policy. So that has to do with when you are working with people under the age of 18, you as a technology company have to be cognizant of how the information that you're collecting on what is considered legal minors is being used. With generative AI, most of the inputs that you're giving it are being used to continue to train that model. What that means is if you're under the age of 18 and you're putting information in, it's tracking and using that information. And so right now, most artificial intelligence companies are not going to be following FERPA or COPPA, which are federal guidelines around how data must be used when interacting with those under the age of 18. So you see a lot of these artificial intelligence tools requiring either parents or guardians to sign up people under the age of 18, or outright bans for anyone under the age of 13. And so From the restriction side of things, it's more about that's the law and that's the national guideline, and so that's kind of what's being held to being what's restrictive. So in practice, that means that like we don't have any artificial intelligence that the school uses for students. Teachers may be able to use it because they're over 18, but for students, there's nothing available to them through the school. Now again, if they're at home and their parent signs them up to use something like ChatGPT, being aware of the privacy policies and concerns, that's well within their right. But as a school, that's not something that we can use with them. And then the second part of your question was.
So you think it would be best to maybe kind of work it into the curriculum and help teachers to teach like students and also just teach the teachers about it?
Yeah, I think in the right way, in appropriate ways that we should be, and I know that that's happening right now at Needham High School, that there are some of our teachers who are working together and collaboratively and even with students to see how these tools can be useful in the classroom. So I think we should encourage that. I don't think we should be afraid of it. And I say that not even completely understanding what the outcome will be. And so that worries me a little bit. We've all heard in the news, or at least I've heard in the news, that the smarter and the more as these language learning models grow and AI learns more and more, that they'll take over the world. They'll replace the human brain. I think some of that's hyperbole, but I've also been around long enough to know that technology has significantly changed the way we live in this world. And so I wouldn't be surprised if AI, if we come to rely on it too much, and what does that mean to the human brain, to the human spirit, to our relationships with other people? I kind of worry about that. If militaries around the world are using AI to fight, or to draw up battle plans, or to hunt down, or police hunt down suspects, I worry about that because there are obviously going to be errors. So there are things to worry about with AI, but the school setting is a place for experimentation and trying and working together to see what we can come up with, and to see how we can really support the use of a tool like this to enrich your learning and learning.
I would absolutely use it and play around with it. Do I think you should use ChatGPT to write your term papers or your papers? No, because it sort of defeats the purpose of learning. But it might be helpful. I sometimes use ChatGPT. I was just writing a grant application, and English isn't my first language. So sometimes I have these super long, complicated sentences, and I'm like, I wonder if this is correct. So I take the sentence, send it to ChatGPT, and say hey, can you rewrite this better, but don't add anything, because otherwise it starts hallucinating facts. And it constructed the sentence way better than I could. So I was like, oh, that's cool. That works. So I think you want to play with it and sort of understand how could it help me? But then really think through should I use it to do my homework, or do I want to actually learn how to be a researcher, or whatever your homework is? And then for schools to use it, I think there's benign ways that meaning that it's not very harmful. I think schools probably supply you with emails, and there's AI used in spam filters. Works really well, and it's because we all can agree that what spam is actually, and there isn't a whole lot of monitoring. So I think those kinds of use cases where you can use the technology is totally fine. I think where it gets really dicey is sort of this idea of should we use it to track how much you pay attention, how much you're missing. There's AI that can check how many where you use your key card, or when you come to class, and should we send alert to parents? And I think I think those we really have to really think through and test them. So I think a lot of times what I see is like people get really excited. They're like, okay, now we can find out if like students are maybe suffering and not going to school and not going to class, and that will benefit everyone. But the question is like, does it actually work? Or does it, because there's a lot of false positives that we see in AI. So like it will alert someone about something, and it turns out that you maybe did pay attention on a test, but somebody walked into the room and disturbed you. So that doesn't mean that you're actually not paying attention. It's just something else happened, right? So I think we have to be really, really careful, and I think we have to be really careful with kids because most of them can consent, and it's like, is that okay to make them use a technology that kids don't have?
So we're already doing that, right? So in the elementary school, as the K-12 director, I have the pleasure of working in kindergarten through 12th grade in the Needham Public Schools, all 8 schools. And at one of our elementary schools right now, we're actually piloting a coding curriculum through code.org to teach students the fundamentals of how AI works, right? We're doing that because we want to, first of all, try out this curriculum to see if it's something that our students like. I just got some feedback from it handed to me the other day, so I look forward to diving into that to see what students are saying about it, these 4th graders. But I think that what I'm really excited about is that there's an interest in the companies and the like code.org or Scratch or whatever it might be, the different coding tools that we use at the elementary level, to teach kids what is AI, how does it work, but they don't leave it at just that. They teach why it's important to know how to use it appropriately, or there's lessons in there on bias. So I think there's some real opportunity for teaching kids about how to use it appropriately, and I look forward to exploring those and expanding those in our district in the next couple of years.
The right to sort of consent. Do I want this to be used on me to track if I'm paying attention or something else?
I think it's going to be a really powerful tool that's really important to get in the hands of students as soon as we can. Keeping in mind that, right, we are limited from a federal policy around what students can and can't get into. I know that there are a number of companies out there that are trying to make what are called like closed systems, so that they can say, nope, the data you put in is your data, we're not taking it, therefore we do, follow the guidelines that are federally required, and we will sign the policy agreements that are required by the state and all those things. So in some ways, as soon as that happens, then absolutely we can jump right in. The other avenue is potentially finding resources that are keeping data anonymized, so that it's able to be used by students because they're not having to sign in to give their personal information. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's kind of a ticking clock, and so the faster we can get it in student hands to be able to be used effectively, the better it's going to be overall, and the more likelihood that those that graduate Needham High School can go into a workforce or school with this really invaluable tool, being able to use it well and effectively to accelerate their learning.
For sure.
So the difference between ChatGPT and Gemini is that ChatGPT is owned by a company called OpenAI. Gemini is owned by Google. Okay. As a school district, and as like many school districts, we use Google Workspace for education. All students have a Google account. I'm sure you're familiar with it. You have your Google Drive, Sheets, apps, docs, all that stuff is built in there. We chose to use Google Gemini for a couple of reasons here in Needham. One, it's built into Google. So when we introduced it to teachers, we wanted to identify a tool that lived in a place the teachers were already familiar and comfortable, right? And we've gotten some really positive feedback for that choice. The second reason is because we already have a signed data privacy agreement with Google. So OpenAI, is not really interested in pledging to school districts that they're going to protect student data. So that's the number one thing we look for. When any teacher, staff member comes to me and says, hey, I want to use this tool in my class, whether it's a very small, like one-off app or a huge investment, the first thing we do is see if it has a data privacy agreement on file, so to speak, with the consortium that we're a part of to make sure, essentially pledging that they're not going to sell student data. So Google has that. We have a long-standing relationship with Google, and it's essentially the same, if you will, as ChatGPT, but I think it's better. The data is more current. It has some really nice integrations with the rest of the Google apps for education, and I like the interface. So that's why we're using Google Gemini.
That's interesting. Okay. As an English teacher, do you think that there should be repercussions if a student gets caught using AI? Like, do you think that should be considered cheating?
My brief answer is yes, but I'll qualify that. It depends on what the lesson is. If an English teacher has agreed or has decided that in a class, in a sophomore, let's just call it a sophomore class, and they're doing an essay, let's say it's a biographical essay, or it's an historical essay, whatever it is. And part of the lesson is that use AI to get some writing prompts. And then from there you have to use your own text, you have to use your own writing. One of the problems right now is ChatGPT. We're not encouraging the use of ChatGPT, and we're not really using it in schools. Students may be using it because ChatGPT has not agreed to privacy restrictions for students. What that means is they can sell, they could take advantage of anybody who's using ChatGPT to make money. Google's Gemini is different. They have a privacy agreement with us, a student privacy agreement. Now, even though you can't use Gemini until you've got to be 18, I think that's going to probably change soon. I can't imagine they're going to stick with that. But anything on Google has a privacy agreement with us, meaning they're not going to sell your data or your information to somebody else. ChatGPT, OpenAI is making money off of everything that people are putting in there, one way or the other, or they're scooping up data about you and who you are. So with an English, back to the essay, that I think that the teacher has to set up the parameters and say, this is what I expect. And then, frankly, it may come down to, and you can turn your essay in at midnight on Thursday evening, or at 5 p.m. on Friday morning, or whatever it is, you can turn it in. And you're also going to signify, you're going to note that this is your work, that you did use AI to get these prompts, but after you got the prompts, and you got this background information, this writing, the following writing in the next 5 paragraphs is my writing, and I signed off on that. I think that's appropriate to do, and I think that's fine to do, something like that.
So I think that depends on the situation. It depends on the teacher. I think repercussions is a strong word. I think that our teachers work very hard to develop curricula and lessons and opportunities for our students to engage meaningfully in their content area. We've been using ed tech tools for a long time. AI is just another tool, right? So just as with any ed tech tool, it has to do with teacher comfort. What are they comfortable using in their classroom? What are they comfortable giving their students access to? And then what guidelines and guardrails are they putting in place to support students in using that tool appropriately? So as far as repercussions, that to me sounds like punishment, right? I think that we have a strong academic integrity policy here at Needham High School that we're working on incorporating language around AI into. So that will provide guidelines for students and teachers about the appropriate use of AI in classroom instruction.
And in terms of like detecting AI, I know that like if you're like an English teacher and you have an essay, like it's hard to know whether to use AI or not. So like, where is that current technology?
Is the artificial intelligence tool that you're using doing the learning for you? And I would equate it to similarly to like having a friend write your paper, or your parent write a paper, or a tutor write a paper for you. You're not doing the writing, it's not your words. And therefore, it's not necessarily the fault of AI, it's now plagiarism. You're presenting someone else's ideas as your own, and just like before, that wasn't okay, it still shouldn't be okay. I think, that being said, if you're using it as a way to generate a list of steps that you might need, or creating a deadline structure for you. So you're still writing the paper, but it's being used as a way to keep you on track for your timeline. Suddenly now that's an invaluable tool. Maybe that's something we've really struggled with, is like, okay, I got this 5-page paper I got to do. I got 3 weeks to do it. I don't know when I'm going to be doing this. I need somebody to help me figure out these deadlines. It does a great job of that for you. So suddenly now, this is a fantastic use for the tool. And now you're writing a more productive paper because you're on time and you know what you need to get done when. I think that's a great thing. So, you know, it just needs to be clearly defined. I think as a student, it's really helpful if you've been given clear instructions on when and where not to use that kind of a tool. Again, just like if you were in math class and they said, great, now use a calculator, I can use a calculator. That's going to make my math go so much faster. Well, sometimes they might say, no, you need to do this by hand because you need to understand how the mathematical structure works here. Then great, I shouldn't use a calculator.
Imagine, you know, I've watched in our elementary schools, we have a program called ST Math, and it's a computer program, and students can use it on their laptops. And there's a bit of AI embedded in that depending on how a student responds, the next question will be harder or more challenging, or maybe the same level or maybe a level below, based on that student's response, so that it's not going to be increasingly harder for someone who can't get it, and then they're just going to get frustrated and give up, but instead it will try to tailor the response to what that student is learning at that time. I think that's one way that AI can be helpful to differentiate for students, because it can provide a challenge for someone who really gets the material and really can move forward quickly. It also can provide some support and some space and time for someone who's struggling with the material a little bit more. I also think that you know, certainly you know, we can try to use these tools to help with students in designing something. You know, there are students who may have some visual impairments, and these tools might be useful to help them create a visual presentation based on their ideas and work. So I think there's going to be really a lot of creative and new opportunities to figure out how teachers can use this information to really differentiate the classroom. I think one of the things I know actually that's happening this spring, the MCAS that high school students and students across the Commonwealth are involved in this spring, my understanding is they're going to be completely graded through AI, through an AI model. And when they tested that, before they decided to do it, they had a group of human graders and computer or AI graders, and they found that they were in agreement over 90% of the time. You know, they kind of came up with the same score for the same paper. So that's pretty powerful and important. If that's true, that we would use a computer-based model, AI, to grade the MCAS, we can then get those results more quickly and maybe turn those results over to teachers who then can help students right then and there. Because when you've taken the MCAS before, you don't get the results for another year. By then you've moved on, and it's not, you know, it's not as helpful. But if we can get results quicker, that might help with some, you know, identifying an issue or you know, a deficit in a student's learning and help them get ready for the next grade. So I think there are some applications that we'll see coming forward.
And have you, as a teacher, ever used AI to help you, or like, do you have any experience with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done trainings on AI for the last 1.5 years now. Been reading about it for even longer than that. We use it sometimes as like a thought partner, bounce ideas off of. I love to use it as like an organizer for tasks. So I might say, this is what I want to do, this is the time frame I have to do it in, how could I break this into further tasks? And it gives me my checklist in a way. And when you work with big projects as a part of your job or as part of your schoolwork, sometimes you don't get those nitty-gritty deadlines, and it's hard to be self-imposed a little bit. So having something to do that kind of for you has been really, really helpful. It can also be, potentially really useful if you're trying to change the way something has been written. So if you're reading something that was written at a college level, so it's highly technical language, and you want to be able to have a summary of it for students that are maybe reading at a high school level, being able to, assuming the copyright is open for it, being able to take that and reword it using something like artificial intelligence can be invaluable in helping people read about it and learn about it. So those are just kind of a couple ways that I've seen it be used, or that I've used it myself, that I think could be really useful. Again, keeping in mind that the task is being done by the individual, and that this is being used as a way to accelerate that task rather than doing the task with AI. Because you will get some wacky stuff if I just had it write a lesson for me and then word for word followed that lesson, or did a script, for example, and had it, just read the script. You will get some very funny, awful things.
That's
So.
interesting.
That-
Like be trusted.
Sure. Can it be trusted? The general consensus right now is not really, because these tools are changing all the time, right? There are many AI detector tools out there. There's Google extensions, there's apps, there's software programs. I'll be honest, I haven't researched too deeply into all of them, but the general consensus from the ed tech leadership community is that they're not very effective in what they say they can do, because AI, the whole basis for generative AI is that it's always changing, shifting, and getting better. So it's hard for these tools to keep up.